A tourist poked the guard with an umbrella, confident that he could get away with anything. But the hero's response shocked the crowd. Let's find out what happened next. London, Buckingham Palace. The majestic square in front of the Queen's residence is a true magnet for tourists. Golden gates, perfectly manicured lawns, and the strict symmetry of the architecture all scream of grandeur and centuries-old tradition. Amid this historic spectacle stood Private Thomas Harding, motionless as a statue. At 28 years old, he was the epitome of discipline. His posture flawless, his gaze focused, his uniform straight out of a textbook. His neatly trimmed light blonde beard complemented the imposing presence of his bearskin hat, which made him appear even more monumental. The bright red uniform with gold buttons was impeccably pressed, its vivid color contrasting with the gray sky, a proud symbol of the Queen's Guard and its enduring traditions. For Thomas, his service was more than just duty. It was a symbol, a tribute to the past, and a reminder that some traditions are worth preserving. But among this idyllic scene, there's always someone ready to ruin the picture. That someone today was a tourist, a man of about 35, slim, with a bright red face. Dressed in an orange windbreaker that looked almost ridiculous alongside a green baseball cap that read, "World's Best Tourist," he completed his outfit with black jeans that might have been clean once and scuffed sneakers with peeling paint. This was someone who saw the Queen's Guard not as a historical symbol but as free entertainment. He had already made himself noticeable, loudly commenting on everything from the weather to the quality of souvenirs in the nearby shops. But when his eyes landed on the motionless guard, a mischievous gleam sparked in his gaze, a hunger for fun. After all, wasn't this exactly what he'd envisioned? What's London without messing with these guys in the hats? "Hey, are you a mannequin?" he shouted, jabbing a finger toward Thomas Harding's face. The crowd erupted in laughter, but Harding remained still. This was his rule, his duty. Even in moments like this, breaking discipline wasn't an option. But the tourist wasn't done. He stepped closer, nearly breaching the allowed boundary. "Come on, man, give us a smile. What, are you not human? Show us your teeth. Or are you just silently judging us?" His voice dripped with sarcasm, but his face betrayed frustration. The joke wasn't landing. Besides a handful of equally immature onlookers, no one laughed. The crowd began murmuring. A middle-aged woman standing nearby crossed her arms and muttered, "Shameful. Why can't he just leave the poor guy alone?" The tourist wasn't deterred. "All right," he drawled with a fake grin. "If you won't smile, how about you wave at us? Come on, that's what we came here for." His voice rang out, grating on everyone but his own ego. Harding, as always, maintained perfect control, but the slight tension in his jaw revealed that this moment of trial was becoming increasingly challenging. The crowd watched intently. Some pulled out their phones ready to record a funny moment, while others shook their heads in disapproval. "Look at him. He's definitely angry," whispered the woman to her companion, nodding toward the barely noticeable movement of Harding's jaw. "But he can't do anything. Now that's self-control." Indeed, Thomas stood firm, silent, and impeccable, as a guard should. But the tension was building. The tourist, realizing his antics weren't getting the desired attention, began rummaging through his backpack. Something about the way he moved suggested he wasn't stopping at words. The crowd around Buckingham Palace grew thicker, and with it, the tourist's recklessness intensified. He, like an actor on an improvised stage, craved attention. But instead of showcasing wit, he pulled out a bright umbrella adorned with the Union Jack from his backpack. Picture this: a man, clearly oblivious to the culture of the country, deciding to use its symbol for a cheap joke. "This is what I think of your culture," he proclaimed with exaggerated indignation, opening the umbrella and waving it dramatically in the air. His ridiculous movements resembled a dance, one he'd probably call humor, though it was nothing more than a desperate bid for attention. The crowd began reacting. A few snickered, while others frowned. Some clearly felt second-hand embarrassment for this orange-clad troublemaker. A young woman whispered to her companion, "This is too much. Why isn't anyone stopping him?" But the tourist wasn't done. He strode toward Thomas Harding, still standing in his monumental pose. Harding's red uniform, bearskin hat, and focused gaze embodied tradition and dignity. The umbrella swung back and forth, slapping at the air in mockery, but Thomas remained unresponsive. "Hey man, don't you have any feelings? You probably hate your job, don't you?" The tourist jeered, stepping closer. His face grew redder, his lips curling into a smug grin. And then it happened. With a loud chuckle, the tourist crossed the white line, the very boundary that clearly signaled no entry. The crowd gasped audibly, but the tourist seemed oblivious. He stepped forward, waving the umbrella mockingly, and lightly prodded Thomas Harding in the shoulder with its tip. To him, it was just a joke, but violating someone's personal space, a person representing centuries-old tradition, was no laughing matter. Thomas reacted instantly. His arm, motionless for so long, moved with the precision and grace of a martial arts master. In one fluid motion, he snatched the umbrella from the tourist's hand, folded it sharply, and dropped it on the ground without a word. The entire event unfolded so quickly that the crowd didn't immediately register what had happened. They froze, their eyes fixed on the scene as though they were watching a moment from a historical drama. "Hey!" the tourist shouted, stumbling back. His smug grin vanished, replaced by shock and indignation. "That's assault! You can't touch me!" The crowd began to stir. Some erupted into applause. Others raised their phones to capture the epic moment. A few voices rang out in support of the guard. "That's right! Good for him!" Finally, someone put him in his place. Amid the chaos, Thomas Harding resumed his position, standing as though nothing had happened. His stillness radiated dignity, commanding respect. Yet the tension in the air hinted that this incident was far from over. The scene at Buckingham Palace was electric with tension. The crowd had split into two camps. On one side, people applauded Thomas Harding, recognizing his composure and professionalism. Some even shouted, "Well done, he got what he deserved." On the other side, the orange-clad provocateur was relentless. He spun around like a top, waving his arms and trying to draw attention again and again. His face, once smug, was now twisted with anger and humiliation. "You all saw that! He attacked me! This is outrageous!" he shouted, his gestures slicing through the air above his head in exaggerated fury. Someone in the crowd quipped, "Should we get you your umbrella back? Seems like it meant more to you than your dignity." But the tourist carried on. In his mind, a self-righteous monologue played on repeat, justifying every move. "I'm the customer here. I pay money to see this. This is my stage. They're supposed to entertain me." And then, like a thunderclap out of a clear sky, an officer stepped onto the scene. A tall, imposing man in a crisp uniform, with a stern gaze and perfect posture, approached the tourist. His voice, calm but brimming with authority, cut through the noise of the crowd. "You violated the rules of conduct at Buckingham Palace. We must ask you to leave." For a moment, everything froze. Even the tourist was speechless, but not for long. "I'm a tourist," he blurted out, clutching his green baseball cap as if it could shield him. "I pay taxes in my country to come here and have fun. You can't make me leave. If you're mentally rolling your eyes right now, don't worry. You're not alone." The crowd began murmuring, "Oh, here we go with the tax argument. Doesn't matter where he pays taxes. It doesn't give him the right to act like an idiot." The security officer, unshaken, calmly gestured toward a phone in the hands of a nearby spectator who was still recording the scene. That's why the cameras are rolling. The whole world is already watching you embarrass yourself and your country. The officer's words landed like a punch to the gut. The crowd burst into laughter, with some breaking into applause. The orange-clad tourist froze, realizing that his antics had already become public spectacle. Embarrassing yourself and your country. Those words echoed in his mind, cracking through his wall of overconfidence. As the crowd chuckled and clapped, the officer motioned toward the exit. The tourist, glancing around in desperation as if searching for an ally, reluctantly trudged away. Even in defeat, he couldn't stay quiet. As he walked off, he kept shouting, "I'll file a complaint. You'll regret this." His words drowned in the crowd's laughter. A woman, who had earlier whispered to her neighbor, now said loudly, "Go ahead and write it. Just don't forget to mention how you behaved so everyone understands." When the orange provocateur finally disappeared from sight, the crowd's focus returned to the guard. Thomas Harding, who had stood motionless throughout, calmly adjusted his bearskin hat. The simple yet dignified gesture drew a fresh wave of applause.